Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? Welcome back, grannies, gators, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It is Monday, September 23rd, 2024. Somewhere out there in the world verse, I've got a brother whose birthday it is today. So happy one of those to you. Guys, tonight we're going to have a really great conversation with a guest that I've been waiting for quite some time to get on the show. Yeah, he was kind of chuckling when I called him a Renaissance man earlier, being retired law enforcement, game warden, entrepreneur, television host, forest firefighter, survivalist, firearms expert, adventurer, and libertarian, not to mention a decade in politics and a whole bunch of other stuff you're going to get a real drink from once we go through just a minute or two of maintenance. Guys, if you're new here, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and tick the bell or the thumbs up, whatever it is, wherever you're at. We're streaming tonight live on Facebook, X, Instagram, Rumble, Wimkin, LGM.news, and whatsupcanada.org. So just 30 seconds of maintenance before we get going. This is whatsupcanada.org, guys. Get over here. You can get plugged in on the Substack just by clicking right there. Or pardon me, I guess you can't see that part, but right here on the Conquer Censorship. So I just got to remind you guys to do that because Substack is where all the good stuff lives after the show. But I really got to take 30 seconds or 10 seconds and just remind everybody to click on the partner, Set Me Free. Gets you over here to our Patriot Switch site. You got to click on the yellow button, which will take you over here. And we've got some pretty serious stuff going on over here for opportunity and stuff that you'll need to know about. So that's you'll find also everywhere and every post, all of the links, all of the information, everything you need to get plugged into our wonderful partners, not sponsors. And Peter, thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. After all of that, did I miss anything significant in the intro there?
Best-selling author.
You're right. I did. You're right. I did. And, interesting. And I'll pull that up here just because I'm going to share it for everybody a little bit later on. You can find a link to that as well. Peter's got some books on Amazon. We'll talk about where some of that comes from. But to get us started, Peter MacIsaac, introduce yourself and what you give for your introduction and let folks know, I guess, if they've been living under a rock, where are you from, what you're about, and where are you to?
Well, it's hard to beat that introduction you gave me, Wayne. Thanks for inviting me on. It's quite an honor, actually. So I'm a Cape Breton boy who spent his first 11 years on military bases as part of a military family. Then we settled back down in Cape Breton. And I have a very long and colored background. I'm 66 years old, a father of 5 and grandfather of 6. And I've been retired now from a 29-year career inside government for the last 12 years. So I was 29 years a provincial game warden, did law enforcement. I had a production company. I produced Hunt Fish television series for 3 seasons worldwide. Actually, it was the first father-daughter Hunt Fish series, I think maybe in the world. Did a lot of different things. When I get out, I was naive enough when I retired to actually believe I could make a difference in politics and help fix things. And I was involved in regular politics for the last 12 years and realized the system was broken. And then one day I figured out, you know what? I'm a scrapper by nature and I can't be pushed around. And back in, I think it was 2018, I had initially really got involved when I filed a formal complaint with the RCMP in Ottawa against Justin Trudeau in regards to the Ogakon affair. And they opened a file and began an investigation. A couple of weeks later, he appointed Brenda Lucky to head up the RCMP, and that file got squashed. And I'm a law enforcement officer, and I know how that things work. So I said, okay. So things are kind of broke at the headquarters at the RCMP. Then I opened another file against him on the We Charity. RCMP Ottawa opened another file. She squashed that one. And then when he gave that hate speech rant in Quebec in French on a local television station, I opened another criminal code complaint against him because A court in BC ruled that the unvaxxed were a identifiable group. Although it wasn't spelled out in the criminal code, that court case lined him up, lined unvaxxed as an identifiable group, and it opened up to another. Some of these cases, by the way, they're mostly the first two are Section 121, the criminal code. That's up to 12 years in jail. And so all the evidence was there to convict. And we had corruption in the RCMP, and they shut that down. And I was rewarded shortly after my initial complaint with an audit. And they fought with me about paying me back HST. Then CSIS opened an investigation into me. And I'm going to tell you something. When you stick your neck out, there's a price to pay, but I'm willing to pay it. I come from a long line of actually 2,000 years of hardened Celtic warriors who a lot of us probably died fighting for what we believed in over the years. And I'm one of them guys willing to do that today. So a lot of people think maybe I've lost my mind, but I'd like to think that I'm cogent enough to be able to carry out this interview anyway. That's a little bit about me.
Wow, so much resonates there, and some of these people are in our community are going to be going, that sounds like some stuff that we've talked about here, that we know a few things about some of these relationships with some of these unsavory individuals, trying to keep myself from getting us shut down too early, because that is a regular occurrence here on this platform. I follow some of these the best I can, some of these attempts at exposing the corruption in the RCMP and all of them, and it's it goes far deeper than most people realize. And when you look at all of that, it's hard for people to have any faith in anything and continue to manifest civility in a time such as this. And now we're staring down the barrel of some of the most insane, hideous, diabolical, evil assemblies of words on paper, and there seems to be no end in sight, with Lord Twinkletoes there down in New York today pretending to be Lord Farquaad. It's just seems to be no end to all of this, Peter. And when you first came across my radar, so I'm going to connect some dots for a few folks here, because I'm learning about you here myself. My first introduction to what you were doing, with being able to connect a face to a name to what you were doing, was with what you're doing in Nova Scotia right now, as far as for what I can only call tactical civics in holding your government to account. And that obviously comes from a lot of what you've been describing here is adapt, improvise, and overcome, in that there's a lot of price to pay for all of this, and you continue to pay that price, but you guys have got them in a tither, shall we say, for lack of a better word.
That'd be a bit of an understatement. So for your audience, I'm the president of the Independent Nova Scotia Initiative. So on our team, we have 2 highly accredited engineers who specialize in dismantling things, fixing them, putting them back together.
I love it.
And our provincial government down here, we have to go to an election within the next year. And the tactic we're using in Nova Scotia is actually trying to be implemented right now in BC. And we'll come back to that a little bit, because we may be able to have a win with the same tactic in BC. Nova Scotia has 1.1 million voters. And in the last election, only 55% of us showed up to vote. 45% of us didn't bother voting. And they didn't bother voting because people all across Canada believe their vote no longer matters. And in the current system, the way we have it, the way the party system is now set up, your vote really doesn't matter. Most people aren't aware of the Little Child case.
We are very aware,
but most people aren't, that by law, politicians aren't required to do anything. They make promises, so they don't have to keep any promises they make. They can lie, get elected. They don't even have to return your calls, your emails, none of it. And you're stuck with them for 4 years.
Our only recourse is to elect someone else next time.
That's it. So we have a solution. And so what happened is I managed to touch base with Brian Peckford. And Brian Peckford has given up on party politics as well, because he was inside the system. He was premier in Newfoundland, and he's the last surviving signatory to our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And by the way, he just lost that challenge they
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
So he's pretty
Yeah.
upset with things. And I try to keep him up to date what we're doing in Nova Scotia. So our tactic is this: we've got 1.1 million voter or people here in Nova Scotia, roughly the same amount of immigrants that the Justin Trudeau government has lost track of right now in Canada. The whole population in Nova Scotia, they lost and they can't find them. You can't make this stuff up. So what happens? We've got 55 seats down here, and Tim Houston, our progressive conservative leader down here, he's more liberal than he is conservative, and I helped put him in there. I have to apologize for that. Is that he? Some of the things that are happening, he only won by a very slight margin. He has a majority of government, but some of those seats he only won by 300-400 votes. So we realized 45% of us didn't vote in the last election because, as I stated, your votes really don't matter anymore. It's just all the same, just a different wing of the same bird. So my engineer buddies and myself and some other people, we said, okay, how can we fix it? Because right now the police are corrupt, our politicians are corrupt, our courts are corrupt, right? So those are the three pillars that you build a society in, and all three of them are broken right now in Canada. So we figure that the only way to beat the system is that you have to use their own rules against them. You can't come from the outside. You'll be labeled, we're already labeled with enough by now, I suppose. But the reality of it is we're just playing the game by their rules, but we're going to beat them with their own rules. So our goal down in Nova Scotia, the Independent Nova Scotia Initiative, is actually nothing but a teaching society. And by the way, I just found out under the Elections Act, because I'm promoting a book, I can virtually say and get away with anything and not be held accountable because I'm promoting a book. And my book is The Redneck Conservative. In my last chapter, we lay out step by step what we're doing down here in Nova Scotia. So our goal is to make sure that the current premier loses his seat to enough independence. And our ideal situation tactically is have a really close election where we end up with a minority government, and the minority government will be controlled by a dozen independents that will sign a performance-based contract with their communities where they're given timelines and they're giving goals that they have to accomplish and timelines to accomplish them. And if they don't do what they've promised to do in that contract, they can be sued for a breach of contract and fired. And for the first time in Canada, you're going to be able to fire a politician. And here's the thing is, these independents, we don't find them. We go into communities, and then the communities rally behind themselves and find someone whose handshake is still worth something. He's not a known criminal. He's not a known pathological lying POS. And it's somebody that when they tell you they're going to do something, they'll actually do it. And then when they're presented with a copy of this performance contract, they have no qualms at all about signing. They say, sure, why wouldn't I sign this? My word's still worth something. Because it'll be literally the first time in Canadian history that you're literally going to be able to hold a politician to account. So if we can get, let's say, like right now in BC, they're looking at almost a virtual tie between the Conservatives and the NDP of 48-49, and then a few other seats undetermined. Well, out there, they're hoping they get 4 or 5 independents. If it's that close, the independents will have complete control of the legislature, and that's our goal down here in Nova Scotia. We're trying to run helping communities run an independent in every riding, all 55. If we can win 10 or 12 of those, if it's any kind of if it's close at all, the balance of power will now rest in the hands of the independents who are bound by performance contracts to do what they said they were going to do. And all of a sudden, the power goes back to the people, and all their own rules get used against them.
And this is exactly like Lisa was saying. And this is where you ticked so many boxes when I first heard you speaking about this. It was a little while back now, and it took a while for us to get this show together to have this discussion, because what you were describing was actually truly representative democracy in action. That is tactical civics. That is establishing voting blocks. That is hitting this internationalist cabal, this top-down policy and radical ideology at the only effective intervention point, and that is at the local and lowest levels of government. I mean, that's where the intervention point is. It's the, my little thing that I say all the time is, localism is the 100%, the only 100% safe and effective cure for globalism. This is they depend on the local establishments to implement their insane policies by the carrot or the stick, and they've been at the trough for so long. The only thing that they fail to remember is that they are only temporary butts in those seats, and it is our responsibility and duty to replace them when the time requires it. And you said, those are the rules. We have to work to do that. And what you've put together with this, with a public acknowledgement of that, that used to be the social contract that went without saying at one point in time until 1992 in the little child case. And that's where things really started to go sideways. And this is, such a simple solution to restoring some of that, at least the basic faith in local democracy again, because to me that's the only way through that arena. And I fight in many arenas, but that is just one of them. That I think that there's something that people aren't and have nothing to fear of getting involved in. Reestablish your damn voting communities. It's not just go and tick a box once every 4 years. Get to know what you're doing and hold the people to account. You'll find them.
Yeah, and so what we're finding, we have a huge groundswell of support here in Nova Scotia. Everywhere we go, people are skeptical because the question is, what are one or two independents going to do? Not much. But I can tell you, you get a dozen independents with only 55 ridings, you can completely and totally take over a legislature. They can't get anything done without your approval. So what happens, it means you can table all the taboo legislation that the parties prohibit even discussing right now. Everything that you sit down across, when you're at a Tim Hortons or any place in Canada with somebody having coffee, the things that people talk about when they think nobody's listening, those are the things that an independent can actually go in the legislature and can't be shut down for talking about. You can talk about the lunacy that kids are being taught in school today. We can talk about the problems with mass unfettered immigration that it's causing here in Nova Scotia. We have 37, I think it's 37 tent communities in Nova Scotia now here in the last couple of years. I mean, I don't know what it costs up where you are right now, Wayne, but I'll tell you what it costs to live down here. And to be honest with you, I don't know how people are surviving. And so what happened, that's all as a result of failed government policies, because nobody, and I mean nobody, is accountable. The press aren't being held accountable either. That's somebody else they got to talk about that's totally fully corrupted is mainstream media. That's why I watched a thing today that said in a 7-day period on a major show on CNN, over a 7-day period, what do you think their viewing audience was?
It was like 80,000 or something.
83,000. It's just that's crazy. And there's Joe Rogan gets 18 million.
This platform has been around quite some time, Peter. I started calling what our government it was doing was a captured government of foreign infiltrators, and they were here as a demolition team, that this was a manufactured destabilization of our country, and that was triggered by actually Brexit. So the globalists started to panic. So we're pretty steeped in all of that. So this is, these guys are fully committed to their foreign unelected policy implementation through these young global brats and this infiltration that Klaus is so proud of. And this is really what we're up against. And so to be able to find anything within the system that isn't an automatic crime is getting harder and harder to engage in at this point, Peter.
So you have to look at Parliament. We have 11 traitors that should be tried for treason sitting in Parliament that can't be named, and they probably won't be named prior to the next election. And that's just what CSIS is saying. There probably very easily could be more. I mean, it's lunacy.
So here's my question on that. CSIS has come out and said straight up since Brian Mulroney 1985, conveniently since then, that every single one of our prime ministers has been corrupted by one entity or another. I think that was a convenient jump off point for them, given Trudeau Senior's time in the prime minister's office before that, and what he took part in against Canada. So my question is this: I don't expect it we'll ever find out who those 11 are, because if we were to apply the same lens of what these people were guilty of, these 11, and applied that to all of these young global leaders, World Economic Forum members, and WHO designates, and NGOs and nonprofits, and all of those things, if we applied that same filter of lens of criminality to, I don't think there would even be a handful left of the 338 standing, to be honest with you,
When you
Peter.
have to look at it as job creation for the penitentiary system. I mean, you got to look at this stuff. There's an upside to everything, right? I mean,
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. But this is we get an opportunity a lot here on this platform to talk about, with other nations, international guests, and the comparisons and the platforms and what they see happening in Canada, and it's mind bending how far and how fast we continue to slide on this. I love this Schwabian Gestapo sleigh ride. Um,
I like
so
that.
so do I typically call it the hashtag WEF Fourth Reich. It's just same principles and personnel and ideology when you boil it down, when you to brass tacks, and I mean every dog there's mountains of evidence to support that theory and idea. So, given that everything is captured, everything is inverted, we're staring down the barrels of Bill C-293 and Bill C-63, and Trudeau's out there grandstanding for the United Nations again today.
Anyway,
I'm in the same boat. Just all I can do is sigh.
well,
And
sometimes you're just lost for words, because what happens is I still find that a bulk of Canada is still not paying attention. I'll give you an example. If you listen to CBC, you're woefully ill informed. Like even during COVID,
misinformed.
for example, my wife spent half her working career in cancer clinical trials. Right, we knew right off the bat, like, whoa, okay, bang. I lost a boy, my oldest son, 23 years ago this week, the same cancer that killed Terry Fox. And there's only 250 cases of that annually in North America, so they're not looking for a cure. But at that time, I became pretty rabid doing investigation. And I'd always known basically that for my entire 29-year career in government, we lied to people every day. So any of you people out there think the government doesn't lie to you, I'm here to tell you I worked in the government. We lied to you every day. And so the biggest way that the government lies to people is 10% straight up lies and 90% lies by omission. We would never, ever tell you the entire story. If you did, you would have tiki torches and pitchforks at politicians' homes and be burning them out. So what we would do is we would spin a story through our professional spin doctors to always somehow try to make the government look good. And we would never tell you the entirety of anything that was going on. So I knew that we lied inside the government for years. And so, like I said, naively, I hoped when I went into politics in 2012 and I ran unsuccessfully, I had a real good showing. But then I learned that, there's a certain secret handshake group that knew they couldn't control me. And they just said, no, MacIsaac won't be going in politics. And then behind the scenes, I got involved in federal politics and I exposed corruption inside the federal Conservative Party, and that promptly got me kicked out of the party. Right? I thought it was a very simple thing. Look, we got some problems. Let's fix this. It'll all look good. Well, no, sit down, shut up, MacIsaac, and you're out now as the EDA president. So then I went, okay. And then I've been working on this book, the book that I wrote for the last 6 years, but I never really had a way to end it. And I didn't want to be just the average guy who complained. And then when I get together with these other guys and they said, okay, we finally have a solution. And so one of the reasons that I put this book together, Wayne, actually, and I wanted it in print because I expect Justin Trudeau to do everything humanly possible to shut you down, shut me down, shut down every form of independent media prior to the next election, what he's trying to do. And if he does that, the only way I said, how can I possibly get the message out to what we're doing? And so now somebody can take that and it's actually a blueprint. By the way, one other thing I'll mention you, how I really got some notoriety last year down in Nova Scotia when the forest fires were breaking out. We had the largest forest fire in the province's history. And it turned out that it was arson. And the federal government was calling it climate change. Then we had that series of fires in Quebec. Remember, there was 13 of them started within minutes of one another. Mm-hmm. And I was sent footage because as part of my 29-year career as a game warden, I was also a professional forest firefighter. And we would just always look at, we fought fires, but the investigator side, and we always just looked at the preponderance of evidence. And the preponderance of evidence, what happened in Quebec, had nothing to do with weather. It looked like I don't mean to be conspiratorial. I'm just presenting evidence. People can figure this out on their own. Those fires started in cloud-free conditions, with no thunderstorms. Some of those fires were over 1,000 kilometers apart from one another, and they started within minutes of one another. Conveniently, when the wind was blowing from that direction down into New York, and they were down there having a big climate change worldwide conference, and it was 3 weeks out from Justin Trudeau about to hand us another big increase in the carbon tax. And all of a sudden, I get military friends say, whoa, that looks like a military operation. And then today with the drone technology doing that, it's a simple thing and not to get caught. So anyways, so down in Nova Scotia, we had a big fire down here, and my wife and I we were on standby to be evicted from our homes. And I said, well, I'm a professional forest firefighter. Some of these, I called some of the supervisors, guys I used to work with, and they said, look, can we help? Well, I said, I could put together a team of pros. We'll come give you a hand. They said to me, Pete, we'd love to have you. So I started making calls. And for 5 days, I called the province. And I had the premier's phone number in my phone, left a message at his office, Minister of Natural Resources, put together a team of experts. We could have been anywhere on the ground within 4 hours. I'm not a frontline guy anymore, but I'm overhead team, right? Because we had specialty in that and our training was all up to date. And categorically, the province of Nova Scotia would not hire a team of experts, local guys to go in and assist where they could, while $200 million of property and woodlands was burning down here in the province. So I kind of got pretty upset, sat right where I'm sitting now, and I made a video that ended up getting 177 million views worldwide. And I started getting calls from all over the world going, what the heck's going on in Canada? And I went, well, it appears to me that somebody's pushing a carbon tax narrative, and most of these fires are being said are arson. And like I say, I can't definitively say that. I can just say, here's what the evidence says. So after that, I said, you know what? The most powerful way to fight back these SOBs is doing exactly what you and I are doing here now, Wayne, and trying to educate as many people as possible.
Oh, Peter. You didn't know any of this about me, but I grew up in the most northern community in Alberta. I spent 25 years in oil field fire rescue, hazardous rescue, all of those things, and I understood right from the beginning what this was, and it was the same training and knowledge and information that told me what COVID was too. When they, after 15 years of being a breathing air specialist, they tried to tell me that this was sane. All of this was manifested by corrupt and evil corporatism. These entities that have been attacking Canada at every diametric. I had Rich Higgins, Trump's former security advisor, on the show before they took him out, talking to us about unrestricted warfare, not just static warfare, but unrestricted warfare, and connecting the dots on all of this. And it's still going on, Peter.
It's actually accelerating.
Exactly. Great point. It's actually accelerating. And you know, thank you for at least getting that video out. By the time that was going on, that forest fire that you guys were experiencing, and that video got that big, this platform had already had its legs chopped out from underneath of it multiple times, and we went down from a million and a half monthly views down to 10,000. Like,
Wow.
they chopped the legs out from underneath of this platform and every subsequent platform since then. But they make me level up. We get better. We adapt, improvise, and overcome. And we've built back doors and making sure that our community will always be a step ahead of them and trying to, until they put me in a gulag, which is what I see coming up with Bill C-63 and 293, when those two hit Royal Ascension and start being eligible for enforcement. That's the day where, if I'm still in Canada, nobody ever hears from me again.
Well, I got to agree with you on that, because I used to patrol the Portapic area as a game warden where the Portapic massacre happened. Paul Palango wrote a book called 22 Murders. It was a bestseller. Needed the best investigative reporting on what I believe was the largest cluster F in Canadian policing history. I worked that area. I actually helped Paul contribute to some information on that book. It was actually a policing disaster. Every basic tenet of police work was ignored. The failure in leadership, what people need to understand is not one person got fired. $59 million in the cover-up. Not one person got fired. 3 people got promoted, and everybody who could got out of Dodge got out of Dodge. They're all gone.
That same process of elevation for ineptocracy is exactly why the country has Bill Blair.
Exactly. And now we're looking at, well, we do have a very serious problem on the horizon, and that's Mark Carney. Because Mark Carney's not stupid. He's dangerous and he's evil. Huh. That man is extremely dangerous. As a matter of fact, a couple of his buddies have already landed multi-billion-dollar contracts just in the last couple of weeks.
I've been bold-faced calling this a coup since the day they announced his appointment. There is no other way. By definition, you go and you Google the definition. Look it up, folks, of what a coup is. And this is exactly what has happened with Mr. Mark Carney, and understanding the relationship and the companies and the influence and this whole we understand the public-private in this community here, for as large as it's allowed to be, understands the World Economic Forum, their public-private partnership fascism that they're implementing. This is in essence, the New World Order, deep state, whatever they want to call it. It's the corporatocracy, it's the slavery, it's the transition to transhumanism, the elimination of us, the carbon, unless you are, modified or enhanced down the road, because if you can't compete, you're not enhanced, then you're just another useless eater. We'll enhance the next dumb animal, coming down the chute. These guys, Mark Carney is the cornerstone of the international financial community of all of that. He is not going to take a position in Canadian politics because that is so far beneath him.
Exactly. He's straight up WEF globalist. So here's the thing is, initially the person that was put in place to take over from Trudeau, when it looked like he was going to be toppled with some of those police investigations we had going. By the way, the one thing I'd like to take a little bit of credit for is Bill Morneau stepped down in the middle of that second investigation on the We Charity. Is that George Soros funded her rise into politics, funded everything that she did. And
100%.
She was supposed to take over, but the problem is she's just flat up too dumb. Like, she's just too stupid. I don't mean to call somebody stupid. Okay, let's just say, on a scale of 1 to 10, she's about a 3, right? They were hoping she'd at least be a 4, maybe a 5.
The talking tater tot.
Yes, I mean, open mouth, insert foot, and it's actually, and then they wanted her actually to be one of the key people heading up the United Nations. And the fact of the matter is they just can't put her anything. So they finally went back to Mark Carney. So Mark Carney, I guarantee you, that man does not.
He's the fixer.
Money. Yeah, so he's a fixer. He's been brought in, and I wish I had a crystal ball and could figure out what's going to happen before the next election. But what has to happen here federally is I don't believe at a federal level that they'd be able to do what we can do provincially with the independence, not yet. But our goal is we've got countries right now following us from all over the world. After that fire, I did that fire interview. I got a phone call from Reiner Fulmick and did an interview with him. And then after explaining him what our plan was in Nova Scotia, this is prior to them arresting him, he said, look, I've talked to a bunch of people all over the world, Peter. If you guys can pull this off in Nova Scotia, it'll become the blueprint for Canada and every other parliamentary system around the world. And that way, he said, they can't try to pin you down for being, any form of terrorist or any kind of a anarchist
or any of these things. Yeah.
We're just going to take your rules and we're going to shove them down your throat, and you're going to have to eat them.
So given the nature of what I do for a living, I don't have to be partisan in my research and the evidence that it leads me to believe. And it's my, where if I was, in a position where I needed to be warning somebody because they were actually going to defend us, I would be looking at what's going on right now here in Canada. Carney is here to create the emotional theatrics required to extend Parliament until both C-293 and C-63 get passed. This is the reason, the cause, and purpose for the stacking of the Senate, to make sure, because those two bills are cornerstone to the International Pandemic Treaty, to everything that the World Economic Forum, United Nations, this psychopathy of unelected foreign entities in Switzerland and Davos. These two bills, that is what all of this is. All of the theatrics, all of this, sellouts saying, and the ridiculousness of it all is because Pierre Poilievre signed on to those same policies. His name is on in his parties, like it's got passed. He has no influence on that. This is the Senate. Carney is here as the fixer to make sure that we don't get onto them, because the young global brats were blowing it. And Chrystia Freeland, making her as internationally famous for what she's really deserves, has been a personal goal of mine for many years, because she comes from my same hometown. So really? I have known what she was my entire life. Wow.
Well, you know what? At least she arranged to give 10,000 piles of $1 million to her dad's ex-Nazi buddy who's over in Ukraine. People don't understand how much $10 billion is anymore. It's just become a word you throw out, but that's 10,000 piles of $1 million, right? And like, I look at this, well, most people don't know that Chrystia Freeland was kicked out of Russia. I think she was around 2021. Her code name was Frida. They identified her as a Ukrainian spy.
2014, she was kicked out.
She was kicked out initially way back when she was 2021. That was her code name, was Frida. She was in there doing some stuff, and they had to run her out of Russia way back then. Absolute poison. So here we are. Okay, so here's the problem that we have. We also have here in Nova Scotia, on Eastern Canada's largest seaport. We sold our seaport here a couple of years ago. It's now controlled by China. And when Stephen Harper was in, he had very specific legislations that our seaport in Halifax had to stay in Canadian hands. It's no longer in Canadian hands. It was sold off, I believe, to an Australian concern who immediately floated through to being controlled by the Chinese. So, and that legislation got changed by Trudeau when he first got in power. One of the first things he did. So I have to wonder, okay, who's one of these people who's a traitor, who's paid off by China?
How is it that we find ourselves, people like you and I, that, and so many other millions of Canadians, the silent majority, I would suggest, of Canadians that spent our lives living, living up to the reputation that Canadians had internationally as being these good basically great people. Everybody wanted to be Canadian, to now finding ourselves where, if we should suggest, for example, that China owning your ports, or Saudi Arabia owning our wheat pool, or of any of these things that our governments have manifested for others to own the basics of survival of our country. If we should suggest that is a problem, that by definition is kind of like treason, we are suddenly the criminal, and that's what we're staring down the barrel of here if we address anything with that kind of lens of definition or understanding of what's really going on. How do we continue to survive with this kind of parsing off of Canada to foreign countries?
So here's one of the key problems with everything that we're dealing with today, and it's DEI and ESG.
Mm-hmm.
So most people don't understand. In the mid-90s in Canada, the RCMP were at the forefront of DEI. I had a friend of mine whose dream was to become a Mountie. In the early 90s, they changed their hiring practice, that they were going to start hiring people based on the boxes they ticked. And rather than the fact, I grew up and I worked with some really good Mounties. Back then, they were rough, tough guys, most of them. And then all of a sudden, you didn't have to meet any of those criteria. And that poured over into all government facets and all levels across Canada, both municipal, provincial, federal. It's in every boardroom. It's everywhere now. So right now, no matter where you look in Canada, all the boardrooms, all the government agencies, all the top tier in all of them, in order to advance and get promotions in anything within the federal government, especially here provincially now, Nova Scotia as well, you have to be full-on woke. You have to have bought into the entire diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda.
Marxist, all the Marxist
right.
Curriculum,
all Marxist curriculum, the stuff that we're taught in school, the destruction of the building block of society, which is the home unit. Like, the DEI problem is, to me, is the key problem in the downward spiral of Canadian society, because no matter where you turn, if you turn to the RCMP, everybody in their upper brackets is a DEI. They're at a DEI position now.
Same in the military.
Same thing
It's
in the
been
military.
neutered.
Yeah, so
Neutered
look
and
at the
captured.
military now. The woman now who runs the military is the one responsible for putting tampons in the men's bathrooms, and they put more time into investigating that, right, than they do than actual real criminal activity. So what happens is common sense is left the room. And that's why when we go back to our independent movement, it is critical for communities. I'll give you an example. We tell communities, the first person who sticks their hands up and say, pick me, I want to be a politician, that's the last person you want to be having, representing you in politics. Reason is most of those guys are getting in because they like the pay, they like the idea of a pension, they like the perks, and they know they're not going to be held accountable. Well, that little performance contract, by the way, I got to give credit where credit's due. That idea came directly from Brian Peckford. He said, you're going to have to find independents are independent. You need a way to tie their hands, Pete. And so contract it is.
Yeah, I love this, and excuse me for interrupting, but that ties in so well with what they're doing in the West Coast with Randy and his group out there with the politician tracker, and the pledge that they're getting their people to address. So very you're finding ways to hold them to what they should be, and then you will actually endorse and support. And this is why I love what you're doing in Nova Scotia and what they're doing out there, because you guys are doing this in regions and areas where it is physically possible to actually achieve this.
We got the numbers. And see, here's the thing, we're not vote splitting. People say, well, you're just going to split the vote. Well, we're not interested in vote splitting. Let's get that 45% who give up. See, here's what people say, why would I bother voting? And here's what I say to them. I say, well, look, in order to have an effective system, you have to have effective recall. And for recall to work, the only people who should be able to participate in recall are the ones who actually voted. So if you don't show up to hire them, you're not going to get an opportunity to fire them. And they're going to say, well, okay, so that'll get me to. So you're saying if I turn out and vote, we need to throw the bum out in the street? I get to say, yes, you do. So the unintended consequences, all of a sudden, you get voter turnout back up around 80%. And then in order to boot somebody out, right, if they're in violation of a contract, you'd have to have at least 51%. But those votes are, if you get recall put in for everybody that's effective, it's like when they tried to get rid of Gondek out there in Calgary. and they failed because they needed more people to come out the voter out than showed up the voter in, and it can't work that way. So what happens is, if 50% of the of eligible voters vote, then you only need 25% of your eligible voters plus 1% to kick them out. That will work.
If I'm not mistaken, they actually did even get more votes than to kick her out than what she got to get in, but it wasn't enough to meet the thresholds.
Exactly. So no party, no sitting party in Canada. There's two things they won't do. One is they won't support having any of their candidates sign that performance contract. That's never going to happen with a party. And secondly, no party is going to vote to throw themselves out. And if they vote for meaningful recall, they know that they can't shove the voter around for that 4 years. They're going to be held accountable. And see, the other thing is most of these guys are down here in Nova Scotia. Our last Liberal premier, he changed the regulation when he first got in that after 2 years down here you get a pension after 2 years. So and what that is the big stick. So they hold that over your head and they say, do what you're told, keep your mouth shut. 2 years, you got a pension. It's not a full pension. The longer you keep your mouth shut and play ball with us, the more money you're going to get. So that system's broken. Imagine having an independent that goes in and the first piece of legislation they table is they say, look, we're going to abolish pensions for MLAs. Well, whoa, right? And what if they say the next piece of legislation is meaningful recall, where only those who vote can recall? And here's the thing is what most people don't understand in a minority government, the power that these independents will have, because if they table legislation, which they can do, and the other parties don't go along with it, they can vote non-confidence, force another provincial election again, and then they have to go back to the voters and say, well, we didn't want to vote on being accountable. We can't support being accountable. Can you imagine going back and trying to fight to win based on the fact that you don't want to be responsible to the voters? So these guys are hungry for power. I'm willing to bet that enough independents in a good 4-year term where you're not the least bit interested in being reelected, you're going to be a wrecking ball in there. You can go in and do exactly what needs to be done and then go back to your life. And
this really, the more I'm hearing you describe, the impact and how it can work, it's so in line with what we're actually seeing happening in Germany and in France right now, where and even for that matter in Ireland and the UK, where these assemblies of independents that are actually, instead of staying out of the party system, but just by agreement of social contract, or even as in your guys' case now with a written contract, going there to do a specific purpose and assembling these representatives in a capacity that has that kind of meaningful impact. That's basically what they've done in Germany, and they're toppling those governments peacefully with these people that hadn't been politicians for 50 years. Macron is now having to back down and losing control of his days are numbered in France as well, finally. But the impact that has on an international scale is so understood. By that,
correct.
I mean these people, Giorgia Meloni becoming now the most popular politician in the EU, Viktor Orban. We stay plugged into a lot of this. What all of this does is this European Freedom Alliance has now got Germany and France saying, we don't want to fight in Ukraine anymore. We don't want this war anymore. We remember what 1945 Europe looked like. We don't want this anymore. And that's simply because of this same thing happening that you guys are doing. There is people are coming together and getting real people that are of the people, creating that intervention point and moving it down the field.
See, most people aren't aware, because I was involved in politics. In order for you to run, ideally, what they're always looking for is someone who can be controlled, bribed, threatened, or somebody that you can control. They need to be able to be compromised, or they can be bribed. And so what will happen is if you go in, and it's a tragedy because a lot of good people go in, they go through the meat grinder, they think they're going to make changes. But people don't understand. Once you elect a person, even no matter what their intentions are, the day they get in politics, they're told by the party whip to sit down, shut up, do what you're told, or you're going under the bus. So we have a good, solid independent down here who survived that and got 62% of the vote in the next election, named Elizabeth Smith Crossan. And she supports everything that we're doing down here. And Elections Nova Scotia, they just made an attempt to do everything that they could to try to shut us down. They lied. We caught them in it. We used another one of their own tools against them. One of the greatest tools we find that we use is freedom of information requests. And then what you find is there's a lot of whistleblowers inside government are more than happy to feed you a little extra data and just bury these guys. So down here and right now, the Nova Scotia government, I would not want to be in the Premier's office or in Elections Nova Scotia right now. When these FOIPOPs come back, I know what we were able to do inside the Department of Justice for stuff that they've done. They can be devastating in the hands of a person who knows what they're doing them. It's a great tool. Everybody should be using them.
Yes, one of the things that, whether it's by the theft of a mission, where these things, these teachings, these civics, this knowledge of how our government is actually run and operated has been dropped by the wayside and replaced with 72 genders and all of that. So they've made the reality of how our world works so far from the ability. We've had a long ways to come to get organized and or to even get remotely educated, never mind organized. We're still a ways from that in a lot of places in Canada, and that's primarily what I want this platform to be, is people to be able to have difficult conversations and learn and get resources to learn more and to understand more. Because if there isn't a path for people to go to, ultimately the only choice left becomes violence. And that's where this Marxist, that's the inevitable conclusion of all of this stuff that they've been stuffing down our necks in this country. There's no escaping it. That's the direction. There will be violence. There will be bloodshed. There will be people in gulags. There will be all of those things, those horrible things. So whenever there's an opportunity to talk to somebody like you, and this is kind of why you got the Renaissance man label from me earlier. There's not a lot of discussions out there about alternatives that are reasonable. Our community here, and this for the community that's watching, I already made Peter promise, I think, right early on, that there was going to have to be more. And we just met and just started talking, and there's going to be way too much to talk about in one episode. So we're going to get to dive into this a little bit more down the road. But our country, or our community here over the years, has learned a lot about de jure, de facto, what Iceland did, what Barbados is doing, what America has done. And so, this is just the only reason why I bring this up, is because people needs to be able to have conversations about other things, because they're all impactful. And that other discussion that I just mentioned, that's what Quebec is using to extort Trudeau and this broken ship right now, is that exact knowledge and information. They don't use that word or the right words, because they want to keep us dazed, dumb, confused, terrified, isolated, and trembling in our homes. But that's kind of where we're at. So that's why I'm excited by what you guys are, not just an idea. You're walking it, you're doing it, and it's being duplicated. This is a potential pathway away from the violence.
Yeah. So here's the thing about it. We might not win. We might not work. But by God, I can tell you one thing. There's no way, with the people that I know, we're going to sit back and just let this happen. It'll have to be, if you're going to steal my freedom, you're going to have to wrestle it from me. And, it's like that cold dead hand thing. But it's amazing how many people that when we sit down, like we do talks all over the province, we'll go wherever we're invited. And people are sitting there and they got their arms crossed and their legs crossed and they're sitting back. And 100% of the people that we get an opportunity to talk to, by the time we leave, the arms open, they're leaning ahead and go, you know what, this will actually work. This is the first thing I've heard in a long time that will work. And so when I laid that out in that book, because of the background that I have, like I'll even throw in the fact that even when I was a bootlegger for a little while, right? when I first got out of university, trying to make ends meet. My grandfather was a World War II vet and run a taxi stand, and I hung around with a bunch of crazy aunts and uncles down here that were bootleggers and the rest of it, and wasn't a big deal to me. Then I went into woodlands management, and I did all kinds of crazy stuff and then I went off to do law enforcement, right? But I'm just your average, really redneck guy with a story to tell. But I'm no different than the thousands and thousands of people that we've talked to across the province that are going, you know what can we do? And when you tell them what they can do, you walk out and basically we're in the business of selling hope. We're not selling anything. We're giving people hope. And people are going, well, this might actually work, because what's been going on in the last, my 66 years on here hasn't worked. So what do you got to lose, right? And to me, this is all in. Either we win in these next elections, either we wrestle this stuff from these globalists, or 5 years from now, it's pat. Right now,
we don't get another chance.
Yeah, we're not getting another chance. This is it, do or die. So same thing down here. So we're on the road nonstop. I'll be down. I'm on the road tomorrow, the next day after that. Between Paul, Mike, and myself, we get ourselves worn out. But you know what? What else are you going to do? I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm a professional hunter and fisherman. I would rather fish or hunt than do anything. And people say, well, Pete, you're retired. Why don't you just go enjoy retirement? Man, you know, my dad was a military guy. He's not alive anymore. If my dad thought I was sitting back doing nothing, he would put a size 10 work boot straight up my ass. I guarantee you.
You know,
right? Pardon my language. Sorry.
You know, it's the truth. I was raised the same way. You know, where I grew up, there was nobody coming to help. You either did it or you died. And you know, if there's something to do, you don't have time to sit on your hands. That's just, you know, bottom line. For me, what drives me is understanding if we do nothing, I understand exactly where we go to a nuclear event and the world is over as we know it. You know, just
people have no idea, Wayne, how close we are, how close we just came on the weekend. You know, people have no idea.
But before we can touch on that for a minute, you know, but for me though, the thing was that I wanted to address is the word hope. And the hope is one thing, but you know, as long as we have breath, we have hope. That is a part of the definition of the word, but it's also still a choice. And we can choose to be, it's game over. I may as well just, you know, sit back and have some Cheetos and a drink while we wait for it to happen. Or I can fight back here, hold my beer till my last breath. I will have hope because I have in my, you know, in my world, I understand that God wins, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's a contract that I get around to be around to see it. So this is where you know, resist in every means with it, whatever you can, with whatever you've got, wherever you're at, you know, at any time. So there's a lot of that to me that I you know, take part in discussions at every level and altitude around the world. We're going to have a couple of interesting ones over the next couple of days here too. We've got an Irish freedom fighter and podcaster coming on tomorrow, and then a mutual friend of ours, I guess we're both going to get to talk to for the first time on our shows this coming Wednesday. But such awesome stuff, Peter. I want to be respectful of your time and everybody else's out there. Last thoughts you want to, you know, leave us with, things that we needs to know, the people needs to know. Where can they get plugged in? Those kinds of things. Like I said, this isn't going to be the last conversation, but to get people going plugged in down the road. All of those things. I don't want you to feel like, oh shit, I forgot, or I should have.
I guarantee you, the second that we got off, I go, man, I should have said this, I should have said that. But we've got a website here in Nova Scotia, and it's not the most sophisticated site. It's independentns.net. Key, it's .net. So independentns.net, and we've got a Facebook group, the Independent Nova Scotia Initiative. But you can find me over at Peter R. Oh, you got it down the bottom corner, at Peter R. MacIsaac. By the way, I got kicked off of Twitter for a week last week. Wasn't even sure what I did. And I've been throttled to the point they won't let me grow past 5,500. I went to that in a couple of months, and then they capped it. There's hardly any get. As soon as I get it, they just knock the feed out from underneath me. The government doesn't want this message to get out. Here's what I would like to say to people, and I put it in my book. We're fighting Goliath, but we're all Davids.
100%.
There's not just one David. Every one of us is a David. Every single one of us can do something as simple as pick up a rock and learn how to throw the one rock. And it only took one rock to take out Goliath. But you got to remember, in Canada right now, there's at least 6 million. What did Trudeau call them? He had a long litany of things that he called at least 6 million of us. And that 6 million can all pick up a rock, right? And everybody can do something. And people need to realize that if you're waiting for someone on a white horse to come in and save you, there's no white horse. There's no one coming to save us. The only person who's coming to save us is the person that you'll shave sometime, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, right? If not us, who? If not now, when?
Well, my thinking is insanity is unsustainable. The sooner we get to work, the sooner the insanity stops, right?
Well,
so
we got a lot of work. Here's the thing: we got a lot of work ahead of us. On that particular book, I see you just put that book out. I have that out now in ebook, Audible.
This is the one that they're looking for?
Yeah, it's called The Redneck Conservative, How Conservatives Are Made. It's on Amazon. It'll be on a bunch of platforms all over the world here in the next week. It'll be on Spotify, and I think it's on iTunes, Audible, and Amazon. And It's funny as hell. And I'd like to ask anybody, if you do read the book, would you be kind enough to go over and give it a review? Because I never thought to ask anybody about that. Didn't realize how important it is. Right?
Yeah,
Unless you don't like it, then don't give it a review.
Well, I did add this link into the show description or show notes. If you click on the little more, if you're watching on most of the platforms,
yep.
You can find a link to this. I'll have to get my sticky, grubby little hands on it real soon, and kind of be able to get more of my brain around the opportunity, and that's really what it is. When something's broke, it's an opportunity to fix it. And if you're tired of it, do something about it
right away. He said, Pete, we're engineers. Let's fix this thing. By the way, that book's not politically correct. It's extremely blunt. If you're a liberal and you decide to read that book, do us all a favor, get in a boat, go out in the middle of a lake, because your head will likely explode, and then you'll probably cause a forest fire, and the liberals will say it was caused by climate change, rather than my book. Right? Just saying.
Oh, I hope it's highly quotable, because I think I need to make a T-shirt that says "Make your own day, melt a snowflake."
Well, I've got one thing in there, and I put it in chapter 3, so that if you read it in advance, I'm hoping that the far left won't get past that particular quote. And it's if I say anything here that offends you, have yourself a big old heap of cup of shut the F up, and realize that your parents raised a pussy.
Well, you're like a kindred spirit to me over here, my friend. I drink coffee stronger than the militant left, so it's just.
And I make mine with liberal tears in the morning, buddy.
100%, 100%.
Just saying.
So you guys have got some action going on. Give us a brief update. What's going on there in Nova Scotia? The reason I'm asking for this kind of stuff right out here at the end is, guys, all of this, whatever I have to find Peter, will be on the Substack. You guys will be able to find it in print with your groggy, wobbly, pre-caffeine eyes, and get the links to the stuff you need to know tomorrow to go forward and melt your snowflake or your politician.
Yeah, and I guess one other thing, guys, is like I said, no matter how difficult it may seem, once you get started, it's really not that big a deal, right? It's almost like we were told that we were alone all through COVID, and that was the great lie. One of the great lies was they had 90% support. Actually, that's not the truth. Since I started doing that, we found grassroots communities everywhere who believe the same stuff that you and I believe, Wayne, and that most of your listeners probably believe. Our numbers are way bigger than the government believes. And what happened was the pressure that COVID exerted on us. When they put that pressure, all these scrappers floated to the surface, and now we're all finding one another. And what happens is they've opened up Pandora's box they'll never be able to close again, right? And I'm just happy to be just a little bit in there. If I can keep one finger from them jamming that lid down on the lid to get it back in the box, I'll be one of the. I mean, I'll be trying to reach out and bite somebody by the ankle with my dying breath. I can tell you that. I'm not going away. I'll be happy to be back on anytime. And look, I really appreciate you taking the time to have me on.
You're going to love this little story I'll leave you with. It was the height of COVID. It was Easter Sunday. I was in a giant grubby welding barn with about 400 Hutterites, Mennonites, and local communities when you weren't allowed to have 8 people in the same residence. And we were talking about exactly the kinds of things that we're talking about today, although in a different way and different means. So yeah, we are the many and they are the few, and the sooner we take that and smile and run with it, and when they come at us, get up, just get up, smile at them, say you hit like a bitch, and carry on. Thanks.
And by the way, on that book, odds are I will promise you this: if C63 goes through, that book could be banned.
Oh,
100%.
That's a whole other discussion and show. We've been covering a lot of those particularly diabolical bills. We gave a lot of people a giant drink from the fire hose here again, Peter. So we'll have to do this again real soon, and let your engineers go to work on how we solve this Senate.
And these guys are two of the very best. And I will give credit to Paul Westaver. He's the guy who initially come up with the idea. Once again, street cred to Brian Peckford. But the real people are all these people in these small groups that need to get some credit for what they're doing. And there's way more of us than the government tells you. You just got to dig around and find them. And we got a lot of kindred spirits from coast to coast. And in the end, ultimately, like I say, we're at the precipice. Either we turn this around or we lose it all. So this is the time to get up off your seat, turn off Netflix, right? Put that beer back in the fridge, and then start contacting friends, share this video, and make a stand. Because either you, like I've got 6 grandkids that are going to say, "Grandpa, what did you do?" Well, they stole all this from us. How are you going to look at them? I mean, how are you ever going to face your kids and your grandkids if you don't stand up and do something here? Anyways, guys, it's been a real pleasure, Wayne.
Absolutely. And look forward to doing it again real soon, Peter. And we will see you, I'm thinking, on some other platforms and out there, other places and doing other things real soon too. So thanks.
Yeah. And if anybody out there is interested in getting a hold of me, they can get a hold of me at Twitter.
Perfect. Awesome. And you have yourself an amazing week, my friend.
When I'm not doing this, I will be fishing trout, salmon, and giant bluefin tuna.
Oh, now you're really going to mess me up. Now I'm going to be distracted all night, but at least
maybe a little bear hunting and some whitetail hunting too.
Rubbing it in now. Now you're just rubbing it in, Peter. All right. Take care, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Wayne. Goodbye.
I wanted to pull up this comment here from Sophie. 100%. We need to figure out that we're Clan Canada and do eat now. Never mind, on letting these talking tater tots like Mr. Speaker continue, driving the bus off the cliff for us all. Yes, a massive thank you to Peter. Make sure you guys go and you find him on X. He's got a lot going on. The links again will be in the show notes on the different platforms, and as well on Substack, everything that you need to get a hold of Peter. And a couple of surprise announcements I held off to the end. I mentioned it with Peter the next couple of nights. Tomorrow night, we've got Emmett Connor, who's an Irish author, speaker, rebel, freedom fighter, and content creator and podcaster. So he's written a book called The Red Pandemic, the Global Marxist Cult. So that, hey, couldn't be much of a better segue from tonight's show with Peter to Emmett tomorrow. And then on Wednesday, we have got former Aussie soap opera superstar to politician to podcaster and now infamous host of the White Rabbit podcast from Australia. So more of this high level international conversations coming up this week, and not sure how this is going to work yet, but look forward to some announcements on Wednesday when Mr. Jim Ferguson and I actually get together in the same space, shake hands, and watch the lefties quiver after when at what happens when a few of us put our heads together. So lots coming up over the next couple of days and the next week, guys. I appreciate everything that you guys do for this platform, this channel. This is symbiotic. Without you, this doesn't exist. I do what I do on this side of the screen, but it's only one wheel of this bus that we call resisting the establishment and the WEF Fourth Reich. So, like I said, make sure you double check your subscriptions. Tune in 7 o'clock Eastern tomorrow. Get everything else you need on the Substack. If you have something important, send me an email, contact@whatsupcanada.org, and whatever it is that you believe in and who is doing the work for that needs the support, help them out directly. There's a lot of people out there that everybody's got a cause. Not all of it is worth it. I just want you to support the people that are doing the best for you. And on that note, that is all. I love you guys all. Stay mighty, my fellow friends, patriots, fighters, prisoners, and hostages. Make sure you check out our partners at Patriot Switch, and we'll see you tomorrow.